Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. This is your energy forecast for Monday, September the 29th. I'm Dr. Karen Parker, and let's get started. We've got usually I say we've got a lot of things to cover. And I'm going to say this morning or this week, maybe we don't have so many things to cover this week for a change. So hang on a second while I call everybody in to join us. Okay, so I want to just first of all start by talking about manifesting, the experience of turning an idea, thought, inspiration into its manifested form, right? Its physical, fully expressed fulfillment. We talk a lot in the personal growth and development community and the spiritual community about manifesting. And maybe some of you have had in your own experience practices that, or you have things in your life that leads you into manifesting. Maybe you have a vision board. I have a dream book, right? Because I travel a lot. So my vision board comes with me in my dream book. Maybe you set intentions every morning. It'd be really fascinating to hear from you all. What is your manifesting process? I have taught manifesting, I'm not going to do the math, like probably for about 25 years, maybe more, probably 26, 27, since the movie The Secret came out, right? When the movie The Secret came out, I had a goal in my podcast. At that time, I had a podcast on Blog Talk Radio, right? And in my podcast, I had a goal of interviewing every teacher that was in the movie The Secret. And I did it. And it was great. And I learned a lot. But I also found in my experience that it was pretty common for people to struggle with manifesting, right? You would do everything right. You could envision, you could, do your vision board, do your affirmations. I actually think I still have a dent on this finger from writing out. I've read a book by Shakti Gawain. Maybe you all have read that book, where she has you write out your visualizations and your affirmations 100 times, 3 times a day. Right? And I did that. And I'm not saying that there wasn't a certain amount of success associated with that. But the thing that I kept coming up with and coming up against again and again in that process is that it's almost like I had a thermostat set on my manifesting. And in my own experience, that thermostat kind of looked like this. I get a little extra money usually, right? And at that time, I was a full-time single parent. I was raising 4 kids by myself. I was running my business, right? I get a little extra. And I mean, oh my God, it was like clockwork. The minute I manifested the extra, right? The minute I manifested the extra, the car would break down, right? It was like, it happened every time. I'd manifest and then the car would break. I'd get a little bit more and the car would break. So I felt like I almost had this thermostat setting, right? That I couldn't go beyond that setting on my thermostat. I wasn't necessarily below that setting, but that was kind of my max, right? I had this weird internal cap on what I was willing to allow myself to receive until I started working on my personal story. I really had to dig deep in there and figure out, well, where is this cap coming from? If I'm visualizing and I'm doing all the things and I'm getting a certain amount of success, but not like fantastic, mind-blowing success. I'm not having some of the experiences that some of these thought leaders that are just like so mind-blowingly miraculous. I'm like at a certain point and I can't quite push past that point. When I really started to dig deep, I really began to explore the relationship between my own personal narrative and in particular, my narrative around my worth, my value, all the stories around the relationship between my worth, my value, my money. I mean, it was a very complicated, messy story. And when I really began to take back control over that story and write it the way I needed it to be written, I really had to take back control over my own identity and really define for myself, who am I outside of the story of what I deserve? Outside of the story of my ancestral lineage. I literally, my grandparents on my father's side literally lived in the poorhouse, right? On my mother's side, my grandmother on my mother's side was 18 when she had my mother. Her husband was killed in the war. They were crypto Jews hiding in Nazi Germany. And when the war was over, they were unbelievably impoverished. Like, my mother was so hungry that she had pica. She was eating the grout from between the bricks in the wall surrounding the apartment where they lived, because she had mineral depletion. And so that was part of my thermostat setting. But it was the only part of my thermostat setting, right? I also had my lived experiences. I had my human design. I had so much in that whole story of who I am was contributing to the thermostat setting on my manifesting. And so that led me to do a lot of research over the last 26 years around, well, okay, where does my story come from? And most importantly, how do we rewrite our stories? How do we literally get in there and make the shifts necessary to change that thermostat setting? And that thermostat setting isn't just about money, right? It's about money. It's about health and wellness. It's about the quality of our relationships. It's about our work, the meaning that we have in our lives, the pursuit of purpose, our lifestyles. All of that is part of your story, or all of that is part of the manifestation of your story. And so all of that sort of led to the birth of quantum human design. It led to the birth of what I call quantum wellness, that ability to create what you want in alignment with your own personal narrative, and how that story that you tell contributes to your health and wellness and everything else. So I'm telling you this because on Thursday, October the 9th, that's in two-ish weeks, a week and a half, 2 weeks, I'm going to be hosting a free 90-minute, I want you to be, as I'm telling people this, I want you to be really clear, it's 90-minute masterclass about taking back control over your personal story. It's 90 minutes because I am so passionate about this right now that I want to make sure that I'm giving you enough time in this presentation for you to have a very real experience. It's going to be a 90-minute experience. It's an experiential class for you, because I want you to see where's your story coming from and what might be holding you back from getting what you want, for you stepping into and activating your full potential for wellness, but also for wealth, for healthy relating, for all the things that allow you to really not only enjoy your life, but feel empowered in your life. Feel like you've got a sense of control over what's happening in your world and how to use that natural creative power to not only make your life better, but to actually become an influential resource for the people in the world around you. All right. This week, I'm going to give you 2 words. Write these down because they're really important. 2 words for the energy for this week. Practice and perfection. Okay? Practice and perfection. So let's start first with talking about practice. The sun this week starts us off in the gate 18. That's the gate of realignment. The earth grounds us in the gate 17. In traditional human design, we call these 2 gates judgment and criticism and, and opinions, right? So 18 is sort of judgment and criticism. The 17 is opinions. That's a shadow of these energies, right? That we see things that don't work. We see circumstances that aren't working, and we offer up our thoughts on why it's not working. I already had this experience yesterday when this transit started. I got corrected by people in my family. And I don't take correction very well, especially when it's unsolicited. That's me, that's my problem. Maybe you have that problem too. And so certainly I would say this week, take a deep breath and don't take anything anybody says personally, because it might feel to us this week that people are criticizing us, that people are correcting us. And for a lot of us, that can be really painful, right? Especially when you're just starting off and you're trying to do something new or grow and you've got like training wheels on. Other people's feedback isn't always welcome, right? But that's a shadow. That's the shadow of these energies. In the higher expression of these energies, this is the capacity to grow and self-actualize through practice. And that could be through practice, the verb, or through a practice, the noun, right? And so much of what we are working on this week is looking at, do we actually have a practice that is supporting our growth and expansion? Are we grounding and rooting ourselves every day in our true essence, in our natural self, in our purpose? And that practice can look however you want it to look. There's no rules about a practice, but to rewrite the programming in your mind, which is really what we're all doing actively, you have to repeat it. You have to repeat it again and again and again consistently, because it's that repetition that begins to rewire the body and the nervous system, that begins to anchor us into a different identity, a different story about who we are. And so this week, the sun and the earth, both starting off at the beginning of the week and then moving on Thursday when the sun highlights the gate 48, the gate of depth, not death, depth. And the earth grounds us in the gate 21, the gate of self-regulation. That when we move through this whole week, we're being invited by the sun and the earth to really ask ourselves, what are we doing to stabilize and root ourselves in our leadership, in our influence, in our sense of control over what's happening in the world around us? What are we doing to stabilize ourselves and keep ourselves in that rooted place, so that as we engage with a world that is changing at a really wild pace, and see, I feel like every day when I open up the news, maybe you feel this way too, and look at it, I'm like, what is happening today, right? What is happening today? That for us to be able to navigate a time where it feels like, you're crossing a stream and you got to find the next rock to put your foot on, the foot that you're standing on as you get ready for that next step is immovable. It's strong. It's grounded. Your core is strong. Your balance is strong, because you have a practice of staying rooted and staying grounded. That's the first theme. The second theme of practice means, let's look at the second theme of practice in the context of perfection. There's this idea somehow that we're going to eventually with our lives hit this, we're going to go up through this growth spurt. That's our youth, right? Go through this growth spurt. We're going to hit a certain point where it's like, okay, I got it figured out. I got it. It's perfect. And we're just going to live in perfection forever. Right? That is not how that happens. Right? Perfection, first of all, doesn't have an endpoint. If you have an endpoint on your perfection, then, you're done. You get to go disincarnate, right? Because that's not the point of being here. The point of being here is not to get it perfect, because there is no such thing, really. There is no such thing, really. I am such a fan of the violinist Itzhak Perlman, who is probably at this point in his 80s, who still to this day, even though he has played in all of the world's top musical venues and is just this unbelievably skilled violinist, he still takes lessons. Because he says, I hope that I always have something to learn, right? That we're always in that learning process, and that perfection is an illusion and it's unattainable. That's why when I renamed the spleen center, I called it the self-actualization center, because I really want to encourage us all to go towards self-actualization, because that in and of itself is sort of an evolving state. Right? We become self-actualized, but if the self is growing, that actualization is in this constant state of evolution. And we think, okay, it's not working. We look at the world and it's like, the world isn't working. I'm not working. It's not working. We have unexpected events that, knock us off our center if we're not careful. Maybe we lose a job, or we have a health condition, or something goes on in our relationship, or we lose someone we love. Maybe somebody we love passes. We are naturally always going to go through disruptive events as part of growth. Because what happens basically is you outgrow your story, right? You outgrow your story, you become stagnant, and the universe is like, hey, she's ready for more, right? And we have these disruptive events. But these disruptive events are essential for us cracking open and moving to the next season of self-actualization. We have a tendency to think that when things are not working, or when we hit resistance, or we hit some growth edge. I'm having a growth edge in my family right now. It's so hard. I'm really struggling with some members in my extended family. And I know it's a learning opportunity for me, right? But I'm also really pissed off, okay? Because it's frustrating and I feel like I'm not being respected and honored. I don't know if that's really true or not, but that's how it feels to me right now. And that experience is a disruption, right? It's causing me to have to sit and really look at my own narrative, my story, who I am, and my role in it. And recognizing that even relationships, as good as they can be sometimes, are never going to be perfect. Because if they get perfect, we've probably outgrown the relationship and we're bored. We get bored. Perfection is not the end goal. So can we all stop for just a minute right now, today, this week? Pause for just a minute and say to yourself, I'm exactly where I need to be right now. I am exactly where I need to be right now for me to get to where I am going. Even if it sucks. Even if it sucks. And for us to take the judgment, which is the beginning energy of the week, off of the state that we're existing in at the moment. Because the minute we start judging where we are, instead of approaching where we are with curiosity, and the minute we begin to judge whether it's perfect or not, like what's perfect, right? Is the minute we start putting that external locus of control out here on how it looks out here, and there's some standard out here, instead of bringing it back in-house and looking at, okay, what's growing here? What's been disrupted? What part of my story isn't working anymore? Where do I need to perhaps be more compassionate with myself? How do I need to be more self-accepting? How do I need to maybe see this as an opportunity to cultivate a practice, or to actually practice repeatedly to strengthen my skills so that I can become and feel more self-actualized? That's the theme of this week. Do you need a practice? Do you need to practice? What's your definition of perfection? Do you need to maybe soften it, stop judging yourself, be gentle with yourself, allow yourself to embrace yourself where you are, and use the energies at hand to allow yourself to reevaluate your growth and expansion? That's the center this week. Really, as challenging as that can be sometimes, especially when it's also coming at you from others. That's the hard part, right? But when it is challenging as this can be, it's actually an energy that really affords us, by the end of these transits, by the time we get to next week, the ability to ground ourselves better. The ability to approach ourselves with self-compassion so that we're not beating ourselves up. It's hard when we get criticized by other people, but honestly, sometimes the things they say are way nicer than the things we're saying to ourselves in our heads, right? And so really cultivating with this energy, self-compassion, self-awareness, practicing being compassionate with the self, and looking again at our story, not with the harshness of judgment, but rather with curiosity, to really move into a space this week to say, well, what part of my story is growing and changing? What's growing and changing in my own life right now? What do I need to evolve in my own narrative? What do I need to do to continue to point myself forward in the answer to that question that I ask you guys pretty much every week? What do you want? What do you want? It's hard for us to see what we want when we're judging ourselves. It's hard for us to allow ourselves to be open to receiving and creating what we want when we're judging ourselves. And so certainly this week invites us into this great exploration around not only perfection, practice, and cultivating a practice, but also how do we soften our judgment with ourselves and ultimately also with each other. We are so hard on each other right now, right? Man, Facebook is a landmine. Go read, read the comments. I think in this group, it's such a lovely little bubble because you all are so amazing with each other. But, we get out there and we judge people, and we judge people harshly. What if we approach it from the perspective of we're all doing the best that we can? And yes, maybe other people's perspectives are wildly different from your own. And certainly I would say it is time for us to cultivate a unified perspective that is rooted in love and acceptance, right? And also, we've got to get compassionate with each other. If you encounter somebody that has a different belief than you, approach that with curiosity. Why? Why does this person have this belief? Why? And look at it with a sense of compassion. There's a need there. Our commonality, if we did a Venn diagram between each of us and we looked at what do we have in common versus what do we don't, we would find that we have more in common with every single human on the planet, for the most part, than we realize. And that place of commonality starts first with self-compassion. We can't create peace if we're not at peace with ourselves, if we are at war with ourselves, if we are judging ourselves, if we have determined that we are good or bad internally. That's the beginning of polarization. So if we stop that, we can move ourselves into, hopefully, a different place of unity and collaboration. All right, a couple of other themes for this week. Jupiter highlighting the gate 62, the gate of preparation. That is a place where worry lives in the shadow. And so it is easy with all of this disruption for us to feel worried. Here's the thing about that 62 energy. It's also about preparation. And again, going back to my theme for this week, the greatest thing you can do to be prepared is to practice, right? The more we practice, the more we strengthen our position. And really right now, what Saturn, who is playing closely with Jupiter, what Saturn is inviting us to do is to really explore what limiting patterns do we have that need to be eliminated? Where do we need to explore and stretch beyond our old habits, our old patterns? Where do we need to unshackle ourselves from the narrative of the past so that we can reset that thermostat that I talked about at the beginning? We can reset that thermostat to a higher place. How do we need to get that, our connection to what else is possible, firmly and deeply established? Lots of other things going on in the transits, but it's not, I really think this week is more of an internal week for ourselves. It's not going to be some of the intense energy we've had for the last couple of weeks. It's okay, that energy will come back. But this week, think about yourself. Think about your own relationship and your own path, your own relationship with yourself, and your own path to self-acceptance and self-compassion. Cultivate a practice, be practiced, make sure that you've strengthened yourself through your practice, and point your sights towards not perfection. Let's let that go. But towards what's the most compelling path of self-actualization that I can follow. Do that and you'll have a great week, especially at the end of the week. Take good care of yourselves. Don't let the naysayers stop you short. You are completely capable of more than you realize. So remind yourself of that daily, and I will talk to you all next week. Bye.